Hi everyone, welcome back to our next installment in this wonderful world of freshman physics. I'm going to talk about the grading system a little more in depth and try to explain it as best as I can. It's a little different, I know, so just bear with me and we'll get through this together. So standards-based grading, it shifts the focus from assignments to skills. So instead of having homework 1, chapter 2 quiz, chapter 3 test, it's going to be more, can students sum the forces in X and Y? Can they draw free body diagrams? Can they set up problems correctly? Skills they develop throughout the year as opposed to just assignments that really don't tell you anything about what the students learned. And this develops a growth mindset among the students. So, they're trying to improve their skills instead of improving their grade. So, since retakes can be done, reassessments can be done, a skill is never just left by the wayside. Students are going to be constantly using these skills throughout the year, and they're going to be growing. So if students started at a 6, they'll go to a 7, or then go to a 9. So students will get significantly more skillful and master more content as the year goes on, which standard-based grading focuses on mastery of content as opposed to getting a certain amount of points in a class to get a certain percentage and a certain grade. Now this focus on skills helps students and teachers and parents identify strengths and weaknesses. So maybe a student is just really not doing so well in creating a best fit line. Maybe they score a 6.7 and then a 7.1 and then a 7.0. But in setting up and labeling graphs, they're doing great. They're getting 8s and 9s. So the students can see where they're struggling and they can allocate their time, more effectively. And generally, standards-based grading, they're graded on a 4.0 scale. So B or a 3.0 is considered proficient or mastered. So in this class, how this is going to work is affected by the grading software we use. So this will be based on total points, and all skills are worth 10 points. This makes it more easy to have a score that is easily associated with a grade. So 9.0 to 10 is in the A range, or a 7 to 7.9 is in the C range. So all skills are going to be worth 10 points, and certain assignments might assess multiple skills or be worth more points, air quotes, points, than others. They'll just be split up in the gradebook, and I'll show you that later. So for example, for students to score in the 9 to 10 range on a skill, they would have to have a very in-depth understanding and be able to solve very complex problems, whereas a student who needs a little help solving problems, they might score in the 7 to 7.9 range, which is approaching mastery. Like I said, retakes can be done for any skill that a student has not mastered. You're not going to be able to reassess on a skill that you earned a 9.3 on in hopes of getting a 9.8 or whatever. So it can only be for skills that you have not mastered yet. And before you get to take a reassessment, you have to fill out the retake slip. And this proves, or you have to provide evidence of your seeking out knowledge to increase your understanding. And this proof might consist of watching videos on the subject, doing extra practice worksheets or practice problems, studying for X amount of hours for this week, and have that signed off by your parents saying that they watched you study, and they can prove that you did it. So students will have to prove that they've done something to increase their knowledge, and then they can retake an assignment or retest a skill. Now, based on the grading software, this might be a little tricky, but retakes will either be a readjustment of the grade on the first assessment, or they'll be added in the gradebook as extra points based on the difference. So, I'll show you that right here. So generally in a class you would see this. Graphing worksheet, Chapter 2 homework, Chapter 2 quiz. None of this means anything. What does an 89 out of 100 mean? Whereas in the gradebook for this class, it'll look more like this, where they set up and label graphs, draw best fit line, calculate slope. These are skills that students and parents can see that they'll be able to see the growth. So, for instance, let's say a student scores a 6.7 on this set up and label graph skill. If they want to reassess it, it will either be changed, the initial grade might be changed to let's say they get a 9.0, which would be an A minus. Or if we can't do that in the gradebook, it would be added as extra points, so this assignment would be worth 0 points, and they would earn the difference of the grade. So if they got a 9.0, the difference between 9.0 and 6.7 is 2.3. So they would be awarded 2.3 extra points, which essentially makes this a 9.0. And that'll be very clearly labeled in the gradebook. Now to talk about tests, as you can see we have set up blah blah blah. And here's a reassessment, a teacher initiated reassessment. Maybe a student earns a 8.7. Now over here, this might be a test. Now instead of saying Chapter 2 test 40 points, it'll be split up into the skills that it assesses. So it'll be best fit line, find equations, set up word problems, draw a free body diagram. It'll be split up to this, and so these will all be worth 10 points. So let's say maybe he gets an 8.9, 8.8. He's really good at setting up word problems, but for some reason he just can't draw free body diagrams. If you were to add up all those points, you would get a 35 out of 40, which ends up being an 87.5 or 88% on the test. Now that's much more informative than just having Chapter 2 test 88 out of 100. So this is how tests will be. They will be split up, but they will still be worth, air quote, more points than simple assignments. It's just the messaging will be a lot more clear for students, and they'll be able to see where they're struggling and where they're very strong. So, rubrics are going to be a big part of the class, since in 8.3 and 8.6, which is a B, if that's considered proficient or mastered, we'll need to know, what does that even mean? What does it mean to be a master of this skill? What does it mean to exceed mastery? What does it mean to approach mastery? So students will be provided rubrics whenever possible. And this is my first year, this is my first time doing this, so there will be a learning curve, but I will do my absolute best to make sure that this is as clear and transparent as possible, so students aren't having to stress out about, what is mastery? Why didn't I get this certain grade? And grades will be awarded based on the evidence provided by the student, so their work on the assignment, and my best judgment. So if a student is doing really well in the class on a certain skill, and on the assignment they show that they get an 8.8 or whatever, which is kind of a gray area, I will use my best judgment to bump it up or lower it based on how students are performing on other assessments, other formative assessments. Here's just a sample rubric of the levels of mastery and some characteristics. So if you are a master, you're considered, proficient understanding. You can do simple problems with no help. You can do complex problems with a little help, and that's in the 8.3 to 8.6 range. If you exceed mastery, that means you have a very in-depth understanding. You can do complex problems with no help. That's generally A plus to B plus. If you're approaching mastery, you're almost there. You need a little help with some simple problems. You need a little more help with complex problems. That's a C minus to a B minus range. If you're just beginning to get an understanding of the concepts or the skills, you need a lot of help. You don't have much understanding, but you need a lot of help, and that's in the D minus to D plus range. And then finally, if there's insufficient data, I can't tell where your mastery level is, based on work you don't turn in or work that just is not up to par. I don't know where your mastery level is if you don't turn in data. So I know that this is very different compared to traditional grading methods. I think that the benefits far outweigh, the disadvantages. Students can see their growth in subjects. They can see where they perform well in, where they need a little help in. It's very clear expectations, very clear what students are being assessed on. I just think I think it's a great system, and I hope that I can implement it in such a way that it helps parents, students understand where their child, is struggling or is performing very well. So I will try to be as clear and consistent and transparent as possible, so there's as few headaches as possible. But this is my first year. I will be there to answer any questions, because this is tricky. It's very different. So please don't be afraid to ask questions if you check your grades and all of a sudden you start doing worse and worse than you think. So just come up to me or email me or whatever, get in contact with me and ask me questions, and I will adjust my system if it needs it, because I'm very flexible, but I can't do anything if I don't know that you're having problems. So please, parents, students, if there's any questions, please, please, please bring them up to me. I hope this was informative for you. I hope this helps understand how the grading is going to work. If you have any more questions, please, please, please ask.